Folks, huge things are happening in Romania right now. As we are recording this, it's Wednesday, late February, Wednesday, February 26th. The president, or the man who won the presidential election, which was annulled by the country's so-called Constitutional Court, he has been detained by law enforcement officials in the capital in Bucharest, actually, as he was on his way to file for the presidential election, which they're doing a repeat of because they canceled the last one. Hi, I'm Alex Newman. This is Behind the Deep State for the New American Magazine. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Folks, what's happening in Romania right now is part of something that is international in scope. It's incredibly significant. And we actually have one of Romania's top political leaders joining us in just a few minutes to break down what's happening on the ground in Bucharest. He's the leader of one of the largest parties in Romania, the only real conservative party, and also the only real party that is supporting the man who won the presidential election. So we're going to get to all of that. Now, Americans have not had a lot of information on this. We got a little bit in the news earlier today as we're recording this, when the man who won the presidential election was detained. As we understand it now, there have been dozens of raids on his supporters. 6 a.m., they started busting in doors. They're hauling these people off to jail. Huge crowds have gathered outside of the prosecutor's office as we're doing this, chanting, "We love you, Georgescu." He is the man who won the election. I want to just show you a little clip of that real quick. So there you see what was happening in Romania, in the capital, as this man, one of the top political leaders in the country, was detained. He's being interrogated. He's being charged, allegedly, with crimes, so-called, including involvement with the Russians, including being involved in a fascistic organization, whatever that's supposed to mean. The fake media in the United States is dutifully smearing him as far-right, which is, of course, the same term they used for Donald Trump. It's the same term they used for Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil. It's the same term they used for Viktor Orban in Hungary. It's the same term they apply to anyone they don't like. And, of course, this term is supposed to conjure up images of Adolf Hitler, who, of course, was the leader of the National Socialist Party, who was actually a radical left-winger. His own supporters said Lenin, the New York Times reported this, that Lenin was the second greatest man in the world. Yes, that Lenin, Vladimir Lenin, communist from the Soviet Union, the second greatest man in the world after Der Fuhrer Adolf Hitler. So, folks, this is a hoax by the media. The guy's not far right. He just believes in borders. He believes in restoring sovereignty. He believes in stopping the social weirdness, the LGBT extremism that has infected Europe. And I should point out, by the way, that this coup that's happening in Romania, as critics are calling it, is being supported by the highest levels of the European Union. And J.D. Vance was just over in Europe for the Munich Security Conference, and he alluded to this. I want to share with you a little bit of a clip from what he shared at the Munich Security. And this made the Europeans go totally nuts. But what he said was, in my opinion, right on the money. Check it out.
Now, we're at the point, of course, that the situation has gotten so bad that this December, Romania straight up canceled the results of a presidential election based on the flimsy suspicions of an intelligence agency and enormous pressure from its continental neighbors. Now, as I understand it, the argument was that Russian disinformation had infected the Romanian elections. But I'd ask my European friends to have some perspective. You can believe it's wrong for Russia to buy social media advertisements to influence your elections. We certainly do. You can condemn it on the world stage even. But if your democracy can be destroyed with a few $100,000 of digital advertising from a foreign country, then it wasn't very strong to begin with. Now, the good news is that I happen to think your democracies are substantially less brittle than many people apparently fear. And I really do believe that allowing our citizens to speak their mind will make them stronger still. Which, of course, brings us back to Munich, where the organizers of this very conference have banned lawmakers representing populist parties on both the left and the right from participating in these conversations. Now, again, we don't have to agree with everything or anything that people say. But when political leaders represent an important constituency, it is incumbent upon us to at least participate in dialogue with them.
Now, you'd think that'd be pretty basic, right? How much have we heard from the left about democracy? We have to cancel elections because democracy. We have to arrest Donald Trump because democracy. And yet, here in a democratic election, people voted for a presidential candidate, and the election was annulled, and now this presidential candidate is being treated like some sort of criminal to make sure he doesn't win the election. Folks, this is absolutely insane, okay? This is insane. And we'll talk about Russia in a minute before we bring on our guest from Romania, a member of the Romanian parliament. But I want to mention also, J.D. Vance shared a little bit about this at the CPAC as well. I want you to hear what he had to say there.
The point that I try to make to our European friends, and I think that they're our friends, I believe that, I know President Trump does, is that friendship is based on shared values. You do not have shared values if you're jailing people for saying we should close down our border. You don't have shared values if you cancel elections because you don't like the result, and that happened in Romania. You do not have shared values if you're so afraid of your own people that you silence them and shut them up. So let's have shared values. Let's defend democracy. Let's have free expression, not just in the United States, but all over the Western world. That is the path to strong alliances in Europe.
Yeah, again, this stuff is pretty basic, right? We're supposed to be allies because democracy, and yet our ally, by the way, Romania is, of course, a member of NATO, and that probably has quite a bit to do with this. They're just blatantly canceling elections and arresting top political leaders. I mean, this is truly absurd. And yet it's what we have come to expect from the European Union, or what Gorbachev referred to as the new European Soviet. So there's a few things to discuss here, right? And I want to try to cram in as much as we can before we bring on our friend George Simion, member of parliament, leader of one of the biggest political parties in Romania. I want to start with the alleged revolutions in Eastern Europe, right? We have a whistleblower who came out of Russia, who came out of the KGB. His name was Anatoly Golichin. And he disclosed to the U.S. government that the Soviet Union was doing long-range disinformation planning. He said they were planning to bring down a lot of these communist governments, and that it was going to appear that anti-communist forces had succeeded. He said the Soviet Union was very likely going to be brought down in a fake collapse made for public consumption. He made a series of about 205 predictions, and about 200 of those have come true so far. In some cases, he even named the people who'd be involved. In Poland, Lech Walesa, the supposed heroic anti-communist leader of the Solidarity Union, literally identified by this man, by this whistleblower, Anatoly Golichin, as one of the key individuals. Now, we know today from the old Soviet archives that he was on the KGB payroll. His code name was Bolek. Okay? So there are a lot of communist operators who remain in power today all across Eastern Europe. Romania is actually the only place where there were serious punishments for the communist butchers. Okay, Romania, they actually had what they call the Romanian Revolution. This happened in late 1989. Massive unrest across the country. People were just sick of the dictator, Nicolae Ceausescu, and they actually got him and executed him and his wife. Okay, so this is one of the few examples of one of these communist criminals being punished after the alleged collapse of communism. And yet we would be incredibly naive not to recognize that a lot of the communist criminals remain. Okay, our guest today actually refers to what just happened as an example of Bolshevist terror being employed against the people of Romania. And actually, the situation in Bulgaria and some of the other Eastern European countries is similar, right? In Bulgaria, when communism fell, a lot of the communists became businessmen. They actually renamed the Bulgarian Communist Party the Bulgarian Socialist Party, and these people remained. I mean, they're still in parliament, right? After Adolf Hitler fell, we put a lot of these Nazis on trial in the Nuremberg tribunals and executed a lot of them, and they were punished. The same with the Japanese. And yet, for some reason, when the Iron Curtain supposedly fell, a lot of these butchers just reinvented themselves. They bought up state assets for pennies on the dollar, and we're all supposed to forget that they exterminated tens of millions of innocent people and brutalized millions more and imprisoned people in concentration camps and ripped apart families. We're just supposed to forget all that. Oh, they're capitalists now. Total baloney, folks. And I also want to talk a little about the European Union, because the European Union is very, very openly supporting this coup that's taking place in Romania. The European Union was always designed to subvert the sovereignty of European nations. A lot of Europeans don't realize this. The CIA and the Marshall Plan were hugely significant in the imposing of what eventually became the European Union on the Europeans. And at every step of the way, the masterminds knew what was going on. The people were told, oh, we need to share our sovereignty so that we can stand up against the United States, not realizing that deep state forces in the United States were building up the European Union and even funding the fake grassroots movements that were pushing that silly idea. Not realizing that the European coal and steel community was eventually going to morph into a totalitarian super state that would govern the vast majority of the lives of Europeans. Like something like 90+% of the laws that govern the lives of everyday Europeans come out of Brussels, right? And they have a EU Parliament, which is a phony parliament. It's a rubber stamp for the European Commission, which has the legislative and the executive authority. There's no democracy here, even if you thought democracy was a nice form of government. Many of our founding fathers very vehemently rejected that. They called for a republic based on individual rights and God's laws. But setting all that aside, there's no democracy here, right? This is absolutely ridiculous. Now, I do want to talk for a moment about Vladimir Putin, okay? Because this individual who won the election in Romania, Georgescu, he's being accused of being a Putin minion. He himself has said repeatedly he does not support Vladimir Putin, very, very clearly. Not wanting World War III, not wanting to have NATO embroiled in a definitely deadly conflict with the Russians doesn't make you a supporter of Putin. I do believe Putin is trying to interfere in Europe. I do believe that Putin is working closely with the deep state. In fact, we've been exposing this in the New American Magazine for a long time. Him and Henry Kissinger, one of the deep state masterminds, they were like two peas in a pod, right? They go to each other's houses for dinner, give each other awards, they considered each other friends. So there's something really fishy going on with Putin. We know the globalists love war. We know the globalists want to use war as a pretext for advancing globalism. So none of this should be surprising. And yet here you have a presidential candidate who wants peace, who wants to restore national sovereignty, who wants to secure the borders, who wants to protect the institution of the family and individual liberty, being called a far-right Putin supporter. Okay, this doesn't make any sense unless you understand that we're being lied to on a massive, massive scale by the deep state in the United States, in Europe, in Romania, and even in Russia. So, folks, there's a lot to say here. There's so much more to say than we're going to have time for. But I do hope that what is happening in Romania, by the way, it's not happening in isolation, right? But I hope it will wake people up around the world. What's happening in Brazil right now, where the Marxist regime of Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva is now trying to throw his main political opponent in jail, Jair Bolsonaro, who's a great Brazilian, who loves liberty, who preserves national sovereignty. These are people who are being attacked by evildoers because they're standing for what's right, because they are standing for national sovereignty, because they are standing against the deep state globalist agenda. And we have to understand the real agenda here. It's not to protect the world from Putin. If they wanted to protect the world from Putin, it would have been very easy to do that. Stop making everyone dependent on his oil and gas would be a really good starting point, right? Stop building up communist China, which is a close ally of Putin, right? This stuff is not rocket science, folks. We're being deceived here on a massive, massive scale. So I hope you'll be in prayer for our friends in Romania. As you remember, they tried to do the same thing to Donald Trump, and plenty of Romanians have drawn the parallels, right? Try to imprison him, try to declare the election invalid, try to declare him a Russian agent. I mean, are we starting to see a pattern here? Okay, the pattern is very clear for anybody who wants to look. And the reality is the people who've been most closely allied with Putin and with Russia, even after the Soviet Union, have been the radical left and the leftists, right? Look at the Marxist regime in South Africa. They're like buddy-buddy with Vladimir Putin. Look at the Chinese communists, right? Communists are literally as far left as you can be, right? They're buddy-buddy with Vladimir Putin. Look at the tin pot tyrant in North Korea, Kim Jong-un. Communist Party. I mean, as radical left as you can be. Him and Putin are like two peas in a pod, again. So, folks, conservatives are not far right. conservatives are not Putin allies. Not wanting World War III doesn't make you a puppet of Putin. And what is happening in Romania is absolutely unacceptable. Folks, if they're allowed to get away with this, it's not going to stop in Romania. It's going to happen in other European countries. We just saw what happened in Germany. The leaders lied to people, so they go, oh, we'll shut down the border. We promise we'll shut down the border. And then as soon as they got elected, they stole enough votes from AfD to leave them only as the second biggest party. So, oh, just kidding. We're going to keep the border wide open. We're being lied to. We're being deceived. We're having our countries destroyed. And this is an absolute outrage. In just a moment, we're going to go to our guest. I'll introduce him. And we wanted to bring on somebody from Romania who's right at the center of this. My colleague, contributor for the New American, Andrew Muller, had the opportunity to interview this individual just recently at the Make Europe Great Again conference. And I want you to hear the perspective of one of the top people in Romania who's right in the thick of this whole mess. And folks, joining us now to discuss this evolving situation, this rapidly evolving situation, is George Simion. He's a member of the Romanian Parliament. He serves as president of the Alliance of the Union of Romanians, the fourth largest political party in Romania. He's also the executive vice president of the European Conservatives and Reformists. It's a group in Europe dedicated to individual liberty, national sovereignty, parliamentary democracy, private property, limited government, free trade, family values, and the devolution of power. George, it's a wonderful pleasure to have you on the program. I know things are evolving rapidly. We understand the president was detained, or the one who won the presidential election was detained today, and more people are being arrested as we speak. You're calling this on Twitter a Bolshevik terrorist maneuver. Talk to us about what's happening on the ground in Romania.
Yeah, so for everybody who doesn't know me, I'm George Simion. I'm the president of the second largest political party in Romania, AUR. We are the main important conservative party here. So in December we had presidential elections. An independent Călin Georgescu, sovereignist, would have won, but they stopped the second round of elections. Constitutional Court formed of politicians, not of judicial guys, not of judges. So today, Mr. Georgescu, the independent candidate who won the elections in December, was coming towards our headquarters of AUR, and he was stopped on the way by prosecutors and policemen, and they took him and escorted him to the general prosecutor's office. And they kept him for like 8 hours. It was early morning in Washington, D.C. When this happened. So we were surprised. He has judiciary control now. He's not allowed to speak on social networks or to appear at television. Sorry, I have a small infant here. I have
no problem.
Small baby boy. I just came home and I'm getting back to our headquarters. We are in an ongoing coup d'etat since 6 December. The globalists don't want to give up power, even if the people, the Romanian people, do not support them anymore. So now we are trying to get free elections, but the police state and the deep state, like you call it and like we have it, is trying to eliminate Mr. Georgescu from the race, and is trying to stop him and stopping us to make his candidacy public and to have the files ready. We need 200,000 signatures of support for him in order for him to be a candidate. So 200,000 Romanians should sign to support him. We already have the signatures, and we want to have his candidacy already deposited for the 4th and 18th May elections, presidential repeated elections. Hopefully we'll go through with this. Hopefully we'll manage to end this dictatorship and end the coup d'etat that is going on in Romania.
George, I want to ask you, according to the news reports in the United States, from what we're seeing, the presidential candidate, Georgescu, he's being accused of being a Russian operative. He's being accused of being involved in a fascistic organization. What do we make of these charges? Are these made up to try to stop his ascendance to the presidency?
Of course, first when this happened, it was 1 p.m. in Romania, in Bucharest, and I contacted my European friends who are on the same time hour as us, and they said in the globalist media they are presenting this as some bodyguard of him found with 10 million euros and a ticket to Moscow. This is all fake news, no relations with that guy and with Mr. Georgescu. They are trying to forge some, to invent some so-called proofs. For 3 months since they annulled the elections, they didn't present any proofs that he has any ties with Russia or any other country. They just don't like the guy. He's not one of them. This is why he is rejected by the system. And we are trying to support him. We are the only ones with the Romanian people and the only ones who support him and try to have fair elections, to have free elections, and to get back to democracy and to respect our constitution.
Thank you for that explanation, George. Now, we're hearing that in Brussels there's a lot of support for these efforts to interfere in the election, to take down this candidate. But, of course, the United States government, we had J.D. Vance recently in Europe very strongly condemning the canceling of the election. What are you hearing from sources in Washington, D.C., in Europe? Is there going to be more international involvement here? Is this something that the Romanians are going to have to fix themselves?
Sounds like we are on our own, because in Europe, Ursula von der Leyen and the globalists still control almost every tool we have, or every institution at European level. The only thing that gave us power was the speech in Munich of J.D. Vance, of the Vice President of the United States. We want to remain a faithful partner to the US and to the Trump administration. So we are gathering support. We'll have a march of 1 million people in Bucharest this Saturday. Some MEPs, members of the European Parliament, will come to Bucharest, and from Poland, from Italy, from the Czech Republic, and they will support us. But we don't have a majority inside the European institutions, so it will be hard. But we are fighting. Fight, fight, fight. This is what we will do. We need your support. We need the United States behind us, because the globalists that are in power don't want to give up democratically and don't want to democratic transition of power.
So, George, who is it that's doing this? You mentioned the deep state. Are there particular individuals, movements, organizations? Obviously, there's people in the government. Were any of these affiliated with the previous?
The current prime minister, the former president who was sacked by us, who just resigned last week. Things are ongoing. We are the main opposition party, so we are making efforts in order to stop them. We are really fighting. We have the judicial system controlled by Soros forces. We have the secret services. So we have a police state that is stopping us, but we will continue.
And why do you think they hate Georgescu so much and his supporters? Why this obsession with stopping him? What is it that, I mean, they say in the media that they're worried that he's going to be friendly with Putin, that he's going to be too closely allied with Russia. Why do you think that? Because I've heard him say himself that he is not a supporter of Putin, he's not a supporter of Russia, although he doesn't want war. Why do you think they hate him so much?
Because he doesn't answer to their orders. Because he will have the same agenda as the Trump administration, because he wants peace, because he doesn't want to support the Ukrainian war, because he doesn't want to support Schwab's agenda, 2030 agenda, and because he is not a globalist. He's a sovereignist.
Wow. And so what's the path forward, George? I mean, what do you see as the ideal resolution to this situation, and what are some of the different ways it could go? I know we only have you for another minute or two, but where does this go from here?
Yeah, I'm looking at the messages that's constantly coming. People are arrested here, so it's crazy. We must gather international support. We must put pressure, internal and external pressure. Friday, we put in the Romanian parliament a motion of non-confidence, a motion of censure towards the socialist government that is currently ruling and is clinging into power. We will have a demonstration, a big mass rally Saturday in Bucharest. So hopefully we will manage to stop them by this pressure and by calling towards free election and towards democracy.
Very good. And Georgia, what's the best way to get updates on this situation from you? I know you're on X. You've been posting there a lot.
Yeah,
It's George Simion.
I'm very popular and I make the most posts on TikTok and Facebook. I'm the most popular politician in Romania. But yes, for the international audience, I'm posting on X. George Simion is the name. Look me up and I will post updates as they come.
Very good. George, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for standing firm here, and I hope we'll get updates. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All righty, folks. That was George Simion, member of the parliament in Romania, leader of one of the biggest political parties in that country, also the executive vice president of one of the major alliances of political parties across Europe at the European level, with a brief update there on the situation in Romania. Obviously, the situation is very fluid. There are updates coming out every moment, so by the time you see this, I'm sure there will have been more. But, folks, this is hugely significant. We're seeing obvious parallels with what happened with Donald Trump, with what happened with Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil, and we're seeing this around the world, where globalist deep state forces cannot tolerate patriotic, pro-family, pro-God political leaders and political parties coming into power. This is truly incredible. I hope you will stay informed. You can follow us at thenewamerican.com. You can follow us on X at New American Mag. And, of course, follow George Simion either on X. You can find him at George Simion, or you can find him on Facebook or TikTok. He's posting updates regularly. Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you'll share this broadcast out with others. We hope you'll get it to your lawmakers, members of your community, because, folks, what's happening in Romania now is the tip of the iceberg, and it's also part of a global phenomenon. The deep state is international in scope. This is a global problem. This is not something that is isolated to Romania. Of course, we don't want U.S. government foreign interventionism in violation of the Constitution, but we as Americans should be aware. We should be involved. We know that there are very powerful people in this country who are involved. George mentioned George Soros, who's been a major player in meddling in Eastern Europe, whether it's Hungary, whether it's the Czech Republic, whether it's Romania. And so we have deep state forces in the United States now messing up other people's countries, overturning democratic elections. Totally unacceptable. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Alex Newman. This is Behind the Deep State for the New American Magazine. Until next time, God bless you all.
Did I nail it, huh? Yeah, did you hear that line I just sold? Man, am I convincing. Yeah, and they think we're unbiased. What? Yeah, what are we spinning next? Hey, what? I'm live? Good evening and welcome to the Evening News.
The mainstream media outlets have been exposed. Choose independent journalism. Subscribe to The New American at thenewamerican.com.